And we are live. Our next guest on the podcast is a man who has one of the best Twitter names ever. Social networking concerns aside, this stands to be an interesting conversation because of the names on this man's resume. He's worked both sides of the fence. First at Engadget as a senior editor, and then jumping over to work on the PR side with brands like OnePlus, Qualcomm, and finally landing at TCL. But that's not where his story ends, and we'll get into that too. But mainly, I wanted to find out what it was like telling both sides of a story. Brad Molen, aka Phone Wisdom, welcome to the podcast.
Well, thanks, Adam. It's great to be here.
Again, because you have actually been on the podcast before.
Have I?
Yes, you have with Jason. We did an interview with TCL early days of the podcast. That was like 3 hiatuses ago, man. It was a while.
Right. Sorry, I could have sworn it was just Jason who did it. So
nope, it was you. You were there too.
Apparently, it was a very memorable experience for me.
It was, and I think you even spoke on it too. It was really quite the impression. But yeah, it was mostly a Jason Gurdon joint. Don't get me wrong, but you were there too. So
Jason does love to talk. So
yeah,
hey, Jason, if you're listening.
Hi, Jason. So Brad, it's taken me a while to get you on these airwaves. We've been tossing it back and forth for probably about a year now. Truth. And when I say tossing it back and forth, I mean I'm tossing you the invitation. You're throwing it back at me, saying no. But now, and your concerns were very justified because as a duly appointed representative of TCL, you didn't want to, be put in a position where you might have to, spill beans or reveal secrets or, whatever like that. Totally get that. But now, as of the email that I received 15 minutes ago, you are no longer at TCL and you are moving on to a new opportunity. So that's exciting for you. Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, I always wanted to join the podcast and it didn't feel right at the time because I wanted to make sure I was coming in as myself and not as a representative of TCL or any other company. So since I have, 2 or 3 days between gigs and I'm officially technically unemployed for a couple days, I thought this was a perfect opportunity for me to come on.
Yep. Back in November when I took my hiatus from freelancing before joining Digital Trends, I used to tell people that I was between jobs, but not like the euphemistic between jobs. I'm actually just between jobs.
Right.
I have left one. I just have not started the other. But yeah. So. Oh, and hey, here's Juan, and he's saying hello, and he just got your email as well. So
that's wonderful.
Fun. Yeah.
So I'm not actually seeing the chat. Is this just for you?
Oh, I don't know. Maybe. Actually, I don't even really know how this works. It's kind of funny. But like I said, this is pretty low-hanging fruit as far as podcasting is concerned. But yeah, I guess you can't see that. I guess if you go to YouTube and like mute it, and then you can see it. But here, here's let me show you what I can do. I can do that. How about
that? Okay.
Does that make it
That's
better?
Fancy.
Okay. All right. So now you are also an old school podcaster. You were podcasting back in the Engadget days, which is why this probably seems so natural for you. And welcome back.
Thank you. I think I have the same exact gear right now that I had when I was podcasting at Engadget. The Blue Yeti mic is a relic from 2011, I think. And my headphones are probably 8 or 9 years old at this point. So it's really bringing back some memories. I was also on Miriam's podcast as well. So definitely a trip down memory lane for me.
And we were talking about the Yeti off air. That's a workhorse right there. I've still got a Yeti around somewhere, and I think I still have the handwritten note on it that the mute button doesn't work. It doesn't effing work on mine because I discovered that live on the air one time, and that was kind of fun.
Hopefully you didn't say anything that you weren't supposed to say, because that could be really embarrassing.
No, I think it was just me yelling at my family that I was still in the middle of a podcast, so please stop talking. And everyone else on the podcast is like, yeah, we heard that. And I'm like, oh. Anyway.
Right. At least it wasn't like one of those conference calls where you're just, telling the rest of your team what a jerk the other person on the line is, but you thought it was on mute and it wasn't.
Oh, back in my tech support days, I was a master of the mute button, and like I'd be like, I can't really. I guess I'll tap the microphone to facilitate this, but like, yeah, just go ahead and click on start, and then click on control panel, not settings, okay? You freaking moron, And then I would, and nobody ever caught me, and it was amazing. Like my bosses
You
would
are
be
a
like.
master.
My bosses would be like, "What? What was that?" I'm just like, "It's okay. I was muted." They'll be like, "That's not okay, but all right." Anyway, and speaking of the old school days, let's talk about some of your old school days. You got your
Yes,
start. Now, did you get your start at Engadget, or were there publications before that?
there were. So I feel like it's a pretty interesting story. Hopefully, I don't bore everybody with it, but I was actually at AT&T for 6 years at a retail position
Okay,
in the middle of Utah. And I was a retail sales consultant. I was pretty miserable. It was a great job at first. I think just like any other opportunity, and you're a college student, and you're just getting going. I felt like it was a great way to get my career going. I had no idea where my career was going to go. I certainly didn't see it going on the path it is right now.
funny how that
And
works, isn't it?
it really is. I I got my degree in health and wellness management, which I
That
have not
is
used at all.
So wait, I'm trying to remember the chronology here. Like Dom Lamberti, he's a he works in the healthcare field, and
Mhm.
Chris Davies, who I think was actually right before him, also used to work in healthcare. So I think we're onto something here. If you want to get into mobile tech writing, you better study healthcare.
There's a trend apparently. Yes. So I about 3 years into my gig at AT&T, I started writing for myself, and that's where the Phone Wisdom handle comes from. Is I started a blog called phonewisdom.com. May it rest in peace. I haven't done anything with it in years. I don't even
Oh,
think it shows up anymore. I probably should look into that. And about a year after that, I started writing for unwiredview.com, which I
hmm.
believe is no longer an active website either, but it was based out of Europe. And it was an
Brad
opportunity.
Molen killing mobile tech blogs since 2003 or whatever. Anyway,
Right. No, so
yeah,
I mean, if you want to be specific, it's 2007 when I started my own blog. And then
right, right.
2008, I did Unwired. And it was a really neat opportunity for me because they didn't have anybody based in the US. And this is certainly a
Hmm.
market that was of high interest to them. So it made a lot of sense for them to bring me on. I did freelance work, essentially just doing reviews when I could, um, news. Like it didn't pay a whole lot, but for me, the thing I was most interested in was being able to play around with all the devices in my free time, and then I could actually apply that to my job as a sales representative.
Okay.
And a lot of customers would come in and talk specifically to me because they knew I knew what I was talking about.
Hmm. All
And
right.
that's certainly a point of pride that I had in my job was I knew people were going to come in and say, "Hey, what do you think about this phone or that phone?" And even though I worked for AT&T, I also had knowledge and experience with Verizon, and I knew all about the Droid phones, for example, even though we didn't have those at AT&T. So I could say,
Right.
"Oh yeah, I've played around with those. I've used them quite a bit. Here are the pros and cons," and I would actually approach it like a reviewer would.
Mhm.
And a lot of people really appreciated that because they trusted what I was saying because I actually acted like I knew what I was talking about. So it really was a cool thing, and it was an opportunity to make money on the side too. So that was
Win-win.
right. It was definitely a win-win. So I did that for about 3 years, and then 2011 came around, and I was really miserable. I was thinking, okay, well, what is where is my career going? Am I going to be destined for retail management or just retail in general for the rest of my life? Am I going to be in sales? I had no idea where I was going, and that was a really difficult place for me to be in. And then everything changed when Josh Topolsky and the rest of the Engadget crew, well, about 2/3 of the Engadget crew
Hmm.
left to form The Verge.
Okay.
I had already met Miriam and a few other folks on the Engadget team through some of the trade shows that I've been to, because I've been to CES a couple times. I went to CTIA back when that was the thing. It was really easy for me. I could go straight down from Utah to Las Vegas.
Yeah.
Because that's where CTIA was at the time. There was even a time where I was in Orlando, and I really lucked out because my wife was okay with me taking vacation time, like actual PTO time, for me to go on these little side quests, right?
She's a keeper. All right.
Absolutely. And it certainly paid off, because those opportunities allowed me to, network and meet people who were already in the business. And so when everyone left and had that mass exodus over to The Verge, I thought, okay, well, they're obviously hiring, because everybody's left. Chris
Right.
Siegler left. And, he was somebody that I looked up to quite a bit, especially given his position as senior mobile editor. And I thought, okay, well, Miriam's there. She's now the senior mobile editor. We've met a couple times. She knows who I am. So I reached out to her, and the rest is history. And it essentially, within a week or two, my life completely transformed.
That's so nice. I mean, it really is, because and I mean, similar story. I have a similar story. Only take out AT&T sales associate and insert, customer. What's the word I'm trying to look, like call center smurf,
Right,
basically.
call center.
And like, that was my life, and I was equally miserable. And now I made like a half transition before I went full board, because I actually worked for, support for an app developer before making the jump into like full-time, mobile. So, and that job was actually pretty cool. Like I kind of dug that job, and I would still be there today if they would have me. But it turns out they wouldn't have me, which is why I had to make that next jump. But wow, I mean, it's interesting that our stories are actually kind of fairly similar. I started off doing like freelance work for Beer Bunny, basically, with Pocket Now, and jumped over to Android Authority, and good times.
Right. When did you start at Pocket Now?
2012, I think it was. I lose track of the years, but it was basically like 2012. It was somewhere right around the Samsung Galaxy S3, I think.
Okay.
So I think that's right in that neighborhood. So,
yeah. Yeah, you were jumping on right as Galaxy S was starting to streamline into just one device. I still remember the first two. Those were miserable phones to review, because I had to review each phone separately. So if you remember back in the days of the Galaxy S2, where there was the I can't even remember the names, but like the Epic 4G, and every single carrier had its own version of the Galaxy S2, because that's just how the industry worked at the time.
That's how they rolled.
Yeah. And Samsung didn't have the brand cachet yet to say, no, we're just going to do one phone and you're going to put up with it and you're going to like it. So at the time, I had to review basically 4 of the same device, and had to figure out, how am I going to review this in a way that just doesn't sound like copy and paste? And that was miserable. So clearly things have changed since then. And even after that, the way that I reviewed phones also changed. I think we just all kind of evolved as things went on, because back in those days, it was pretty much the Wild West of mobile blogging, tech journalism, phone reviewing, content creation, all of that. It was just very new, and you could do basically whatever you wanted, and you could be as creative as you wanted to be, and it would actually what's the best way to put it? Like everybody was doing that, and I think all of the viewers were interested to see what people could come up with.
Yeah. So how long was your tenure at Engadget before you made the jump, which we are about to talk about?
Just shy of 4 years at Engadget.
Okay.
So I started out freelance for about a year or so, then I went full time. And then once Miriam left, I became senior mobile editor. That's, I believe, in 2013.
Okay.
So I was senior editor for maybe 2 years before I left.
So now I want to say 3 years, because I'm pretty sure when we met in 2016, you were still we met. That was the first time we met face to face at CES 2016, and I'm fairly sure you were still at Engadget, but you might have like been no.
Nope.
Were you at Weber Shandwick by that point?
I was. So
Really? Okay.
yeah, I'm trying to remember exactly where I was, like which client I was representing at CES in 2016. It may have been Netgear, but it's hard to remember. So yeah, I left Engadget in November of 2014. And that was
Okay.
one of the most difficult
Huh.
decisions of my life.
Okay. I probably at the time just knew you from Engadget, so like that's how like I associated with you. But I mean, honestly, 2016, I was such a freaking noob. That was like my first trade show ever, and like I was just mildly intimidated by basically everybody I met. So that's
The first
probably
CES is so difficult because you have no idea where to go or what to do. I remember my first CES, I had zero guidance whatsoever. So I just walked into a random hall, went to the first booth that I saw, and they were like some of the really tiny booths that nobody ever visits. But I'm like, I'm just going through each of them, like, I wonder what these guys do. And here, show me what you're like. I had no idea.
yeah, yeah.
So
You really need an itinerary when you go to these things. That I have since learned, but
right,
man,
you kind of need somebody to just walk you through, like, okay, go to the central hall, do this, go see these booths, and then you've got Pepcom, you've got Showstoppers, like kind of give you the lay of the land and
yeah.
what's actually important, what's not, because otherwise you can get so lost so easily and you lose so much valuable time.
I remember when I went back in 2019, the app was actually fairly crucial to my workflow, just because like it was, I was able to know like on this day I'm going to be in this hall, and that's where you're located, and you're located, and you're located. So let's line up times that make sense, for that. And I still wasn't quite oriented enough that I wasn't like running back and forth across the hall. Like if I could have
Right.
made a more of an arc, it would have been much more much nicer. But I'm hoping that when CES returns in person in 2023 fully, then we can then I'll be able to make less of a mess of it. But so how was how was making the transition from freelance at Engadget to going full time there? Did you have any reservations whatsoever, or did you just kind of know like this is the card I'm hitching my horse to?
Absolutely. The latter. So it was not a difficult decision for me to go from freelance to full time at Engadget because ultimately I was going from a system where I just got paid per post
Hmm.
to a salaried position. And I was actually able to start getting benefits. So there was about a year of time where I had to rely on getting my own independent health insurance and stuff, which obviously is not cheap when you're trying to do it on your own.
Oh, see, I married mine, but okay.
See, that's helpful, but one thing to share is when I was working for AT&T, I was not making enough to support my family.
Right.
And like I am fully on board with, having my wife work. That wasn't an issue. What was an issue is we had two brand new babies
Mm.
that were 16 months apart,
Hmm.
and every single day we were both going to work and dropping them off at the grandparents, and we're like, this is frustrating because we're not getting any personal time with them. Also, we're putting a huge strain on our family babysitters, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So it was, you could imagine just the intensity of the realization when I went over to Engadget, or I got offered the position at Engadget. I went from, I'm working retail, horrible hours, and just being absolutely miserable there, not even able to make enough to support my family without my wife working, to crunching the numbers. I was like, okay, as long as I treat this like a full-time job where I'm writing this many posts, They give me a stipend for all the administrative stuff. As long as I do all of that, then I'm working from home, able to support my family, and also working my dream job, because that really was my dream job.
Mm-hmm.
I had always looked up to Chris Siegler and the rest of the team like, man, I wish I could be doing what they could do and, make a living out of it. And at the time, I didn't think that was
You were.
possible. I
Yeah.
just figured at the time, well, this is more of a mobile blog or whatever. They're come to find out, no, actually, I was able to make more by
As a matter of fact.
right. So maybe I just wasn't a good enough salesperson at AT&T. Who's to say? But
Right.
it was fantastic for me to have that realization that, wow, I can work my dream job and I can support my family and work from home all at the same time. This is amazing. Oh, and I can travel and I can review tech gadgets and do all these things. Like, it was just such a eye-opening experience for me.
It almost
So
doesn't seem real when you like first start doing it. Like, you're just like, this is really my job. Like, this is I still have those moments today. And yeah, so all right,
absolutely.
so
It's
let's
like what is
oh,
it? The
go ahead.
Talking Head song where it's like, how did I get this beautiful house? And how did I
Right.
get this beautiful wife?
How did I
How did
get
I get
here?
here?
Yeah. And it's just it's good because it's good to know that there's somebody with like as weird an origin story as my own. So now let's talk about leaving that dream job, because I remember this quote from my when I because you I think I want to say you no, because you had already let you okay, so I don't know what it was, but somehow I was talking with some head people over at Android Authority about how you had left Engadget and moved over into PR, and one of the comments was, oh, that's right, he has a family to feed. So um like, okay. But
Not quite accurate, but okay.
right. So I'm just kind of curious. Like, obviously, it probably wasn't that, but like, what made you decide to move over from to the other side of the fence, as it were?
There are a lot of reasons, certainly, and again, it was the one of the most difficult decisions I've had to make in my life, because I recognized I was at my dream job and I was actively deciding to leave my dream job for PR, and I didn't know how the dark side, as media likes to call it, I
I
didn't
wasn't
know
going
how
to
the
say
dark side.
that. Okay.
Yeah, I did not know how things were going to be on the dark side. I figured, hey, this is going to be a neat opportunity, but it also could have been miserable for me, and it's possible I could have just immediately regretted the decision and wanted to come back. And then I feared, okay, well, would I even be able to come back? Obviously, having the journalism experience, I figured I could try PR for a while, and if it didn't work out for me, then I could move back. Maybe not to Engadget specifically, but to somewhere else
Right.
in the field. And there's a few main reasons why I made the jump.
Okay.
The biggest one being work-life balance. And I know PR is not exactly the standard for amazing work-life balance, but it was at least better, right?
Okay.
So, and the reason why I say that is because I found myself, especially once I became the senior mobile editor, I found myself just completely swamped with all of the reviews and other responsibilities that I had. So, for example, I was constantly staying up until 2 or 3 in the morning, writing reviews, editing reviews, doing all of that because
Hmm.
I was on deadline. And there were times where, like, we would go to Lake Tahoe on vacation, and instead of me enjoying my vacation, I had a Nokia Lumia phone to review at the time. So
Yeah.
I was, the rest of my family is trying to enjoy the trip, and I was stuck in the hotel room. And of course, my wife was not too happy with me because
Hmm.
I'm not there with them enjoying the vacation. And so it was experiences like that where I realized, you know what, I need to find an opportunity where I can still be in tech, which is my passion,
Hmm.
but not find myself completely tired in the middle of the day because I've been up working until 3 or 4 in the morning. And even I would be going to the playground, taking my kids, and I would, instead of focusing on them, I would be kind of, sneaking glances at my phone, like, okay, well, what am I missing right now? Because there was so much. It was like the 2014 version of doom scrolling, right? Where like I'm constantly looking at my email pitches that are coming in, like what are the things that I'm missing? What do I need to be thinking about? So
Yeah.
even though I was there physically with my kids, which is great, I also wasn't there entirely mentally. And so by making the switch to Weber Shandwick, going over to the PR side, even though the work life balance was still not amazing, I still found that once I was done with my work for the day, I was done.
Right.
I would turn off my email, I would turn everything off, and then just go and enjoy my time with the family. And yes, there were some occasional exceptions to that, but the one nice
Sure.
thing about being with the agency was it was a little bit easier to completely shut off those kinds of things. And I know some people in the agency who would probably disagree with me on that. Kind of
Mm.
depends on how high up in the agency they are. But for me, in the position that I was at the time, it was it was a much more ideal situation to be in. And I still could work from home doing this. We even moved down to San Diego because Qualcomm was one of my primary clients.
Mm.
That was one of the main reasons why I chose Weber Shandwick, was the opportunity to spend time working closely with Qualcomm.
Okay. Cool. And I mean, I think when you're on that side, when you're a sort of like, I don't want to say controlling the narrative, but you have a say as to like how the, at least the initial stages of the story is being told. I think you have farther out deadlines that you can kind of space out the work a little bit more, whereas opposed to like on the news side, like something could break and we're just like, oh, we got to do something now. We have to we have to dive on this. And so yeah, I definitely see where you're coming from. I think I've managed to avoid most of the late nights, or at least in terms of my digital trends work, not for the podcast work, because it's a second job. It is what it is. But in general, like, there are things that crop up at like 9 o'clock at night. It's just like, oh, well, yeah, I guess I got to go downstairs now. I'll be back. you know
Right.
um but at the same time, when I go on vacation, I'm probably not taking my laptop with me. So not
It
judging. That being said, on my last vacation, I did have three phones with me that, like, every time I stopped to take a picture, I would take a picture with one phone, take a picture with another phone, take a picture with another phone. And in most cases, each of those phones had like three different lenses. So picture, 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 phone, picture, 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 phone, picture, 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 phone. And yes, it did turn into a piece that I ended up writing when I got back from vacation. But still, that
I
was
remember that very well. Always having 4 or 5 phones in my pockets, thinking,
mm,
when I'm 60, this cancer is going to be so fun.
just a bandolier of Galaxy Notes or whatever.
Pretty
But
much.
yes. So after being at Weber Shandwick for a while, you then transitioned over to working. Now, remind me what the terminology is. When you're with Weber Shandwick, that's agency PR as opposed to at
In-house.
in-house PC,
Mhm.
in-house TCL PR. So, what made you want to make the transition over to a single brand as opposed to, you can work with Qualcomm or Netgear or whatever over here? So, what made you want to make that move?
It's interesting because I have conversations with my agency teams and just other people who are in the industry, and I feel like the general consensus is like there's two types of PR people. There's agency people and in-house people. Every once
Mhm.
in a while you can go back and forth, like some people can do both, but I feel like that's more of a rare thing. And what it's all about is, by being in house, you can focus on one specific company, and
Mhm.
you just get completely enveloped in all of the messaging, the roadmap, everything. Like that is your track. And even though you have a bunch of different products, you're always focused on that one thing. Whereas with agency, um, agency, you're working on several different companies, which there's nothing wrong with it. It's great if you are really good at multitasking.
Mm-hmm.
You also have billable hours where you need to be keeping track of every minute and every second that you are working with a given company or client.
You
And
okay?
and at least with my experience, this might be different for different agencies and different reps within those agencies. But for me, there were experiences where I was told, you need to work with this client. And it doesn't matter who the client is. You're just, that's your job, is
Yep.
you need to be able and willing to work with pretty much anybody you are asked to. And so there were quite a few companies who I would be doing work for. I won't name them, but there were
Good
companies
idea.
where I didn't have the passion to work with them. Now, granted, I still did my job.
Right.
I just wasn't exactly the happiest when I was working with those clients.
And there's nothing wrong with working for like a skincare client, but what do I care? Like a lot of people do care. Wonderful,
Right.
and more power to you. But I don't care.
And I was
So
fortunate enough to stay within tech. I wasn't asked to do anything outside of tech. One of the reasons that Weber wanted to bring me on was because of my experience as a former journalist. So
mhm.
I could offer some guidance to all these different teams as to, well, this is what media are looking for. And here are some ideas on how you can adjust the pitch so it's actually going to resonate with this particular person that you're trying to pitch, this particular target.
Hmm.
So I was fortunate enough to stay within tech because that's really where my strength was. But there were certainly some clients who it was hard to really find the passion that
Yeah.
I really needed to have with them. And it's still a good experience. I loved being able to get to know a whole bunch of different areas of tech
Mhm.
besides mobile. And I'm very grateful for that. And I feel like being on the agency side was a great stepping stone for me in my career. So going from media to agency to in-house, I feel was a really good progression. So Jason, who we mentioned earlier,
Yeah.
Jason actually took a chance on me. He, according to him, he had wanted to bring me on for quite some time, and we finally were able to make it work where he could bring me into this position as senior manager of communications for the North America region for TCL. And
Right.
it's not all of TCL's. It's specifically TCL Communication, which is essentially the mobile side. Of course, you've got the televisions, which are great, and it's a completely different business group. Obviously, we do a
Mhm.
lot of things together, but they have their own teams, they have their own PR rep, and so I came to work primarily on the mobile side of the business. And
Yeah.
knowing that's where my passion has always been, is in mobile, I felt like this is a great opportunity for me to really get back into the roots of, why I got into this business in the first place. And so being able to focus specifically on TCL phones, of course, there's Alcatel and BlackBerry at the time. There were a lot of things going on that were really exciting and really allowed me to engage a lot more than I had been at Weber.
And and I came back because you were working with TCL, who's a mid-range brand. Let's be honest, they're not gonna put out the flashiest stuff out there. And I would privately, not in any official capacity, but you and I would be chatting about various TCL products offline, and I would point out like one little picadillo that I found, and you'd be like, yes, but consider this angle, and I'm just like, you know what, you're absolutely right, because
Right.
that is a really good value add for I forget what we were even talking about at the time. It was probably a tablet or something, um, but but I mean, it was refreshing to work with a person in the PR side who really knows this stuff, because because you can draw those parallels. You can be like, well, this tablet is like this other tablet over here, but we offer you this and this, and they don't. Oh, that's a good point. And so it's kind of like, I say it often enough, but it's kind of like having the other team's playbook. When when you have to put your phones up against another company that's also making mid-range phones, then what they have to offer. So you can obviously help not only develop a story, but develop a story as it compares to the competition that is out there, and you actually know it. Like it's not just like, oh, we've read the PR materials from, I'm going to throw out a name, Samsung. We know what those phones do. Yeah, you've read the stuff, but you, as Brad Molen, you actually know it, and that's a major asset when it comes to a brand. And frankly, I think more companies should do that.
I 100% agree. I think it
Mhm.
was a huge strength for me coming into this side of the industry. Certainly having that experience as media first, and by doing so, I, of course, having reviewed all these different phones. Granted, this now that I've been with TCL, it was I was at Weber for about 3 years. And coming over to TCL, that meant that I was about 3 years removed from being a reviewer. So I didn't know every little thing about every single phone anymore, like I used to,
Right.
like having the encyclopedia or encyclopedic knowledge of every single phone, but I still knew the
Oh, I
industry.
don't
I
even have
still knew
that
the
now. Don't
media.
worry about it.
Yeah, it was hey, I know, like, just using you as an example, like, okay, if we're pitching you on something, well, I know you, I have worked with you, and having that that experience and that knowledge, in addition to just being on the side of the reviewer, I I have I have a pretty good intuition of what you are looking for and what you're not
Hmm.
looking for. So I'm not going to spend time trying to pitch you on something that doesn't matter, right? I would rather spend my time trying to find the best possible targets instead of just doing this blanket approach to
Yeah.
just mass emailing everybody. I don't love taking that approach because that never works, right? So, and it's also something that you appreciate, that I'm bringing that personal touch to you. Like, hey, like, this is something that I know, at least I have a 90%, um, like there, I feel like there's a 90% chance that you will be interested in this. And if you're
Right.
not, then you'll just delete the email, whatever, it's no biggie. But I also don't, okay, sorry, I'm all over the place here, um, but I remember being media and being pitched on things that were completely irrelevant to anything that I was doing. And generally, if I started getting pitches from certain people that were just consistently off, I would start not even looking at their pitches because I knew that they were going to be crap.
Right.
So I never wanted to become that guy, like on the PR side. I didn't want to be coming to media like, hey, here's this pitch. It's going to be something dumb or irrelevant to you, but I need to do it anyway just to satisfy, the people above me, just to satisfy my clients or my company. No,
Right.
that doesn't do anybody any good. I wanted to say, okay, well, I know Adam works on this and this and this. He doesn't work on these other things. So why would I pitch him on these other things?
Right. And we appreciate that. So, are we allowed to talk about where you're going? I think we might have mentioned it in passing, but I'm just kind of curious. Is that a wall I'm not allowed to go up against, or I'm not sure, like, where you? I
We
mean,
can
you can't speak in any official capacity for them, obviously,
Right.
but
Right. So yeah, we can talk about it. We just can't really talk in depth on any of the products
of
or
course, of course.
anything like
So,
that. But we can say
so
where I'm going.
yeah, so you're going to MediaTek,
Yes.
which is exciting. I think MediaTek is a very interesting brand, at least as far as I'm concerned, because when you, and especially, you mentioned that you moved down to San Diego because you wanted to work so closely with Qualcomm, and now, and years later you're going to work for their direct competitor. And so I was just kind of curious, like, what was it about MediaTek that drew you and said, yeah, I want to talk about that?
I see a lot of growth at MediaTek. They're on a very good trajectory right now.
Hmm.
And even during MWC, there was an announcement that MediaTek now has MediaTek is now in more Android devices than Qualcomm.
Okay,
And
right, right.
right. So
I had to think about
MediaTek,
that for a second. I'm like, yeah, that makes sense. Okay.
yeah. So I think for years MediaTek has had this reputation of being like the little brother to Qualcomm for,
Mm,
for what I'm not sure if that is
guilty.
actually yeah, like I'm not sure how accurate that is, but that is the overall perception. And like even when I was a reviewer, I admittedly looked at MediaTek as, okay, this is these are chips that you would find on cheaper, more affordable phones, right?
Right.
So, but you see what MediaTek has been doing the last few years. You know, one thing that they've been doing is these MediaTek summits, which is kind of what Qualcomm does as well. Like both of them do
Hmm.
it. But the last couple of years, it's really helped increase the brand awareness for MediaTek, where bringing media and influencers and analysts into the fold and really showing everybody what is on the roadmap, what they are capable of doing. One of the things that MediaTek told me as I was going through and interviewing with them was that everybody has at least one MediaTek device in their house somewhere. They may not know exactly which device it is, but MediaTek is in everything, like TVs, routers, like all sorts of IoT and smart home. They're just in everything. And so I see this as a fantastic opportunity to really help the company continue to grow and expand. And also for me on a personal level, it's great to be able to get more experience with other areas of tech outside of specifically mobile, right?
Sure. Sure.
So yeah, so I'm looking at this as a great way for growth, not just for myself, but for the company as well.
So, what is it about SOCs that you find so compelling? Because first you wanted to work with Qualcomm, now you're working with MediaTek. Like, what is it about the brains of the devices that makes it so? Why are you so attracted to that particular component? I have to ask.
So that's actually a very good question, and I I feel like even though I am not the most technical of mobile geeks. Like I am not like a non-tech where, you get into the nitty-gritty on every little thing. The fact of the matter is the SoC is it's the heart, it's the brain of
Hmm.
your mobile devices, it's the brain of like basically every electronic device, whether you realize it or not. And I kind of like that having this opportunity at MediaTek, I get to learn even more about the inside story. Like what makes these devices tick? How does this all come together? Right.
Mm,
So because without SoCs, you don't have anything. Without the silicon, without the semiconductor, nothing's going to work. And so it really is fascinating to see not only how that translates into mobile technology specifically, but just
hmm.
tech in general. And I see so many areas of expansion and growth, especially over the next decade or so. I feel like, you have new areas of technology coming out. Like you look at what's going on with AI and augmented reality are the two that really come to mind right away. What kind of role is the SoC going to play? What is MediaTek going to be doing in those fields? Like those kinds of things are also really fascinating to me.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Awesome.
and those are things that I can't necessarily answer right now, but to be a part of this process where we are looking into all these new areas of technology and even existing ones and seeing how we can continue to further, forgive me for saying it, but further the innovation, because I've been in PR long enough. It's just,
Understood.
yeah.
I'll allow
I really,
it.
I do everything I can to keep that word out of pitches. But every once in a while, it actually is relevant. So I try to only use that word when it actually makes sense to use it.
We
So,
appreciate it.
but in this case of like just generalized innovation over the next decade or so, that I think we're going to be seeing a lot of really neat applications. And I am very curious to see how we as MediaTek will be in the forefront of all of that new technology and pushing that forward.
Awesome. Awesome. So, all right. So we're coming up on the end of our hour. And because this is a working lunch and I kind of need to get back to things. But now, um, it didn't even occur to me until you were literally on screen and we were 5 minutes into this conversation that I know in 2022, I have been finishing off Beyond the Douds with a series of questions, a sort of lightning round of questions. And it
Ooh.
occurs to me that I never actually gave you the questions ahead of time because I usually offer to. So I apologize for that. But I also realize that these questions are pretty much geared towards people in my field, not so much yours. So I am going to attempt to adjust them on the fly
All right.
so that they're relevant to you. So bear with me. All right, but yeah, so let's dive into these questions. So the first question is, are you a roamer or do you have one set location for work?
I work from home, so I guess that's one set location. Although with MediaTek, I will probably be working hybrid once the office opens.
Okay. But when you are not working in the office, you have one set location to work at home, I guess
I
is what
see.
I'm driving.
Yes.
And you actually literally built yours in your backyard. So
I did.
so
Things were getting crazy during the pandemic, so I needed some space for myself, and this was a perfect opportunity to do it.
understood. What was the last song or artist that you listened to while you were working?
Ooh. Probably, I mean, the most recent one was probably the Genshin Impact soundtrack. But
Okay. All right.
another one is a group called the New Division, which is kind of like like an indie synthwave kind of group.
Okay.
So
You know, Nick Sutrick pointed out that Stabbing Westward had a new album this year, and so I've been on the Stabbing Westward kick for the last couple of days. So
stop. I have not even thought about Stabbing Westward for years.
now that's the name I've not heard for a long time.
Like I think I even saw them once when they opened for Depeche Mode, but that was a long time ago.
That sounds right. Yeah. What was it? How did Nick describe him as like a depressed industrial? I think, which is not wrong. Yeah, I used to dig them back in the day, and you know what? Turns out I still do. So good for them, and good for you, and good for us. Okay, so now we have to do some adjustments on the fly. What is one word as a PR person that you try not to include into a pitch? I think we actually just kind of talked about it.
Innovation. Yes. I
Okay.
very much, because I feel like the word innovation becomes a crutch for PR people. Like it's just easy enough. And marketing in general, let's be honest, like any press
Yeah.
release, you usually see innovation in there somewhere. It just has
Hmm.
become it's like the tech version of and like you just kind of use it as filler. And so I try very hard to just not use it at all. Like I was just saying, unless it is actually applicable
Yeah.
and literally relevant to what I am trying to do and say.
It does kind of feel like a buzzword, though.
It very
In
much is
most
a buzzword.
cases. Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay, so as a PR person, what is one thing that you wish you knew? Which actually, this may not be relevant because you lived the life. But what was one thing that you wish you knew about the people that you were emailing, the media people that you were emailing? Like whether it's in general, like I wish I knew about media people in general, but you were one, so I don't think that's relevant. But like, what's one thing that you would want to know about? The interim mobile editor at Digital Trends before you sent an email. What's one thing that you would like to know?
That's a very interesting question because, like you said, I do have a very different approach
Approach.
to it. Just because I know, like in this case, the interim editor of Digital Trends, right?
Right.
Um, but I think the one advice that I would have for most PR people in that situation is make sure that you are reaching out to the right person, because that can
Okay.
make all the difference in the world. So
Right.
like you have your beats, you have your area of specialty, but Digital Trends is a large team. You have a
Yes.
lot of different people working on different things, and so you might have one person who is working specifically with TCL, and you just need to make sure that you are getting the right audience, and that you are catering your message to the person that you are reaching out to. And
Okay.
so getting to know them like on a personal basis, that's something that is very important to me, not just because of my job. Like I am a very personal person. I love getting to know people. I love being social. Um, so I just anytime I go on these media events, if I go to New York or CES, like it's a reunion tour for me, and I love just being
Hmm.
able to catch up with everybody. And when you have those connections, it's so much easier to just be able to reach out to them and say, hey, like let's chat about this. What do you think? Is this something that you'd be interested in? Is this something that I should go talk to somebody else on the team? What's your take on it?
Gotcha.
So that I don't know if that even answered your question, but
No, you're fine. You're fine. Like I said, we're kind of working things on the fly here, so no worries. How long does it take you to write a proper pitch? Now, normally this is a question about reviews, so there's a usual set of but I'm actually kind of curious. Like from the time you sit down and say, "I'm going to email Adam about this brand new thing that MediaTek is making."
Mhm.
Like, are we talking minutes? Are we talking hours? Are we talking days? I'm just kind of
Ooh.
curious.
So there's definitely a process involved, but I
Hmm.
will say once I have all of the information that I need from my sources in house,
Yeah.
then it usually is, I would say, probably an hour, sometimes even less.
Okay. Well,
So
I'm honored. The number of times you've emailed me, you put a lot of time into me. I appreciate that.
yeah, and to be fair, like there are times where the pitch is a little bit more generalized and maybe not geared specifically towards you. However, when I'm going through a pitch, one thing I do look at is, okay, well, here is the list of people that I am reaching out to. Does this apply to each person on the list? So
Hmm.
like if you're on the list and I'm reaching out to you with a pitch, I'm going to be looking at like, okay, well, do I need to change this? Do I need to adjust this a little bit to fit Adam specifically, right? So
Right.
I don't want to make it sound like I'm doing an hour for each individual
No,
media, because there's just
you
not
have a
enough time
canned
in the day.
response, and then you tailor it as necessary. I get it.
Right.
So that's
So,
that's
but
that's a throwback to my tech support days.
right. So yeah, but the time can vary depending on the material. Sometimes it's just a super quick, hey, just want to reach out to you and let you know that these new phones, like just thinking TCL brain right now, but like, hey, here is this new phone that is coming out. We just want to give you a heads up on it. Here's a few like, high level KSBs, but also one thing that I do is I put together a digital press kit that has all the images, any press
Yeah.
release or fact sheets, spec sheets, whatever. I put all that together. And honestly, here's one thing. And again, I get really long-winded, so I apologize. But
You're fine.
one thing that I have learned over the years is you need to make it short and sweet. It's like a sales pitch, right? You only have a very short period of time to catch somebody's attention. And the
Right.
same applies to PR. So if I'm reaching out to you with the pitch, I'm not going to send a full novel's worth of stuff unless it's absolutely important. But even then, I only do like I try to send the most important things in the first couple sentences. So you get, hey, here's the overall point. Here's the overall pitch of what we're trying to do. If you need more
Yeah.
information about it, here it is under the fold, as you like to say
As
in the media sometimes, or at least
in
back in the
the
days,
old school
newspapers
media
were a thing.
days, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, that's kind of how I look at it. Is the shorter the better, and I can certainly send all the other information together as part of a packet so you can look through it. And then if you have questions, you reach out to me.
Yeah. Okay. All right. This one's going to take some doing, so bear with me here. All right. Like, so we talked about how when you're working agency, you don't really have much of a choice about who you work with. They tell you to go work with someone. So now the question is normally, has there ever been a product that you received and tested that was so bad you decided not to review it? But I guess to ask you the question, has there ever been a client that you were asked to work with that, and you don't have to name names, so we're not burning any bridges here, but
Okay.
And maybe you went and did your job, but maybe in the back of your mind you were thinking, like, why is this company doing this thing that they're asking me to help them write their story for?
All the time.
Okay.
All the time. There's definitely not just one instance. There are several clients where you look at this like, I'm struggling to catch the vision, but I will do the best I can with the material I'm given.
Okay.
And that's I think that's common with most agencies.
Without naming any names, can you give like a general example of, like, I worked with a phone maker that had a really no. Well, let's not go there. Let's not go there. Anyway.
Yeah, it'll be too difficult. So
yeah, it would be to navigate those particular. All right, I'm just gonna flat out skip this next question because you do written content, you do written pitches, you don't really do audio or video. Although I guess I could ask you, back in the day when you were in the media, did you generally prefer written, audio, or video content, and why? And I should say making them, not consuming them.
That was going to be my follow-up question, is making or consuming. So in terms of making, I would say writing, because I've always been a writer at heart ever since I was a kid, always writing stories and things. So I feel like writing has always been my primary means of expressing myself and sharing my voice. I, of course, did the Engadget mobile podcast for 2 years. So audio was, I guess, the secondary. But I always felt very nervous being on video. I always had a very difficult time. And I was required to do some videos, like for some of the big reviews, like iPhone or Samsung reviews with Engadget. I needed to be in front of the camera, but I never felt at ease in front of the camera.
Well, you have done it like a champ for these past 57 minutes, so let me just tell you.
Well, thank you.
I'd say arguably better than me. All right, we got 3 more questions, so let's bang these out real quick because we're running out of time. Influencers, here to stay or a bubble waiting to burst?
Here to stay, but I think just as media has evolved over the years, influencers will continue to evolve. I mean, you take a look at TikTok. A couple of years ago, it really wasn't a big thing for tech influencers. And all of a sudden, now we're seeing a lot of tech influencers making TikTok one of their primary platforms. So I think it's here to stay. It's just the formats will change over the years.
All right. So, and this one actually is kind of refreshing that I can ask you this question, not being in the industry, but who's the first reviewer that you listen to or read or watch when reviews drop on a new product? Like who's your go-to? Who's your stable? And you do not have to say me. It's totally understandable.
No pressure.
In fact, I would actually probably be a little insulted that you were lying to me if you said me.
Right.
So.
Yeah. This is going to be a difficult one because I feel like I would get in too much trouble. But at the same time, I don't feel like there's one specific person that I always go to no matter what. I think oftentimes it depends on the kind of content. It depends on what I'm like reading into. Certainly I have my, as I tend to call them, like top tier media in the sense of like, you know, CNET, The Verge, Engadget, you know, all those folks. Like I always try to keep up with what they're saying. What's the big news coming out? But I also, you know, there's plenty of YouTubers out there that I like to watch. So I'll give one example because you know he's a good friend, Michael Fisher. Like
He's a common name for this question, so no shame.
no shame, and I just always appreciate his voice. Like he has a very natural voice. He knows what he's talking about. His video quality is impeccable, and you can always see and sense the passion that he has for what he's talking about. And one thing that I've seen about Michael is his shift in focus over to foldables and on other niches like that, but primarily foldables, and just seeing exactly how much passion he has to talk about, you know, this new area of technology that's so fascinating.
And in your time at TCL, I'm sure you've had more than a few conversations about foldables with one Michael Fisher. So,
indeed.
Yeah. All right. And so last question, if you weren't working in this field, what would you be doing for a living?
Oh my goodness. Well, the path I was on until I went over to Engadget was in sales. I don't think I would have stayed in. Yeah.
The path I was on was tech support, and screw the hell out of that.
It's interesting. So everyone tells me that I have a great broadcasting voice. So a part of me thinks, you know, if I had started down a career path where I focused on broadcasting specifically, who knows where I would have ended up, right? Yeah. So I do think like if I weren't doing what I do now, that could be a very interesting career choice to be in.
Okay, play-by-play for the Padres. I like it. That works. All right, Brad.
I could do the golf voice.
There you. Oh, you could do the golf.
He's going in for the putt now. Oh, and it was just a little bit outside. He just needs one more. Get it. I don't even know like what to say as a golf commentator, but I've got the voice for it.
I was gonna say I don't think outside is a thing, but
yeah. Anyway, no, that's baseball. Just a little bit outside.
Yeah, just a bit outside. Tried the corner and missed. Anyway, so all right, we are at the end of our hour, so we need to go ahead and wrap things up. So now is the time that I roll out the red carpet for you, and you can let everybody know what's going on and how to find you and all that fun stuff.
Sure. So you can find me at Phone Wisdom on Twitter, all one word. I am Brad Molen on Instagram. I don't really post as much there as I do on Twitter. I'm much more active there. So those are really the best ways to get in touch with me. Honestly, I'm pretty much on all of the social medias because you kind of have to be in this line of work. So it's pretty easy to find me.
Excellent. Well, Brad, thank you so much for finally leaving your job so you could finally come on my podcast. Because we all knew that was the reason. But no. So in all seriousness, thank you for thanks for not telling me to go blow myself and just a year ago and say I'm never gonna do it. So just stop asking. But you stuck with it. I appreciate it.
Thanks for being patient with me.
And we got you on. And at the end of the day, that's what's important. So thank you for coming on. And I want to thank everybody else who tuned in and who is listening to the high quality version later on for listening. And I want to thank. Okay, I'm fine. And to everybody who tuned in during this live stream and to everybody who's listening to the high quality broadcast later on, I want to thank you all for listening and for giving us the benefit of the Doud.